The closet where truth slept. The knock at 2 a.m. He thought the knock at 2 a.m. was just his son's nightmare, until the closet revealed letters that shattered his world. The truth wasn't hiding a stranger. It was hiding betrayal, blood, and a secret that turned fatherhood into war. The night was thick with silence, the kind that presses against your skin and settles in the bones. Our small house, tucked at the edge of a quiet suburban street, felt like the only place still awake in the world. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed red, 2 a.m., as if to remind me that this hour belonged to dreams, not reality. I stirred, restless, when I felt a tug on my arm. "Daddy." The whisper was sharp, shaky. It wasn't the gentle nudge of a child who had wandered from a bad dream. It was raw terror, carried on his breath. I forced my eyes open, and there he was, my son, pale as moonlight, his small chest heaving, his eyes wide with dread. "Daddy, someone's in my room." The words sliced through the fog of my sleep like a blade. In an instant, I was awake. My body moved before my mind caught up. Instinct. Pure, old survival instinct. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, feet hitting the carpet, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He stood there trembling, his pajamas clinging to his damp skin, his little fists clenched like he was holding on to courage that wasn't his size. "Stay here," I whispered, but he grabbed my wrist. His grip was desperate, shaking. "No, don't leave me, Daddy." The plea was so fragile it nearly stopped me in my tracks. But I knew I had to go. Whatever had unsettled him, I needed to face it. I freed myself gently, ruffled his hair, then moved quickly down the hall. The shadows stretched long and thin across the walls, bending with the faint glow of the nightlight plugged into the socket near his room. Every step tightened my chest, every creak of the floorboards felt like an alarm. I pushed his door open. Darkness greeted me. His room was still, the air heavier than it should have been. Toys lay scattered across the floor, the plastic fire truck, the bucket of Legos, the stuffed bear slumped near the dresser. Everything looked ordinary. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, like the air itself was holding its breath. "Hello." My voice came low, controlled. Ridiculous, maybe, but in that moment I wasn't sure who or what I was talking to. Nothing. Just silence. I moved further inside, scanning corners, pulling the curtains back, my body rigid, every sense alive. My son stood in the doorway, behind me, hugging himself, watching. "There's no one here," I said gently, kneeling beside his bed. He slid under the covers, small and trembling, his eyes darting around the room as if shadows might grow teeth. I tucked the blanket up under his chin, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "It was a nightmare," I whispered, steady, certain. Nothing more. For a second, I almost believed it myself. Almost. Then I heard it. A sound so faint I thought I imagined it. Tap. Tap. It came from the closet. I froze. My son's eyes widened. The sound came again, soft, deliberate. My hand tightened into a fist. Every instinct screamed at me to grab him. Run, call someone, do anything but open that door. And yet, I stood. My legs carried me forward, slow, heavy, like wading through water. The closet loomed at the far end of the room. I reached for the handle, hesitating for half a breath, then pulled. The door creaked open. Inside, nothing. Just shadows clinging to rows of tiny shirts, jackets, the faint smell of fabric softener. I crouched low, scanning beneath the hanging clothes. Nothing moved. No intruder. No monster. But then, my eyes caught on something. At the very back, shoved into the corner beneath a pile of blankets, was a small box. Wooden. Dark-stained, edges worn with time. My breath caught when I saw it. Not because of what it was, but because of what was etched along the side. Her initials. My wife's. I pulled it out slowly, careful not to wake suspicion in my son. He watched me with wide eyes, but said nothing. The box was heavier than it looked. The carvings were delicate, almost beautiful. My wife had never shown me this before, never mentioned it. I unlatched it. Inside, neat stacks of folded papers, envelopes, photographs, letters, all addressed to someone I didn't know. I didn't read them there, not with my son watching. I closed the box quickly, forcing calm into my movements. "See," I whispered, steadying my voice. "Just an old box. Nothing scary." I slid it back beneath the blankets, out of his sight, and tucked him in again. His body finally relaxed under the weight of exhaustion, and soon his breathing evened out, sleep pulling him back. But I didn't move. I sat there, staring at the closet, heart drumming in my ears. The words etched into my mind like a warning. It wasn't his nightmare. It was mine. The night bled slowly into morning, but sleep never returned to me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while the weight of that box pressed against my chest like an iron bar. Every creak of the house, every shift of the wind outside, seemed louder than usual, as if the world knew a secret it refused to share. When the first thin line of sunlight broke through the curtains, I rose. My wife's side of the bed was already cold. She had woken early, like always, slipping downstairs to make coffee, to hum softly in the kitchen, as if nothing in the world could touch her. That was her gift, her mask. I walked past the bathroom mirror and caught my own reflection. My eyes looked hollow, ringed with sleeplessness. A stranger stared back at me, but there was no time for doubt. I went into my son's room again. He was curled on his side, breathing softly, wrapped in dreams far away from this house. I crept toward the closet. The box waited there, almost glowing in its secrecy. I pulled it out with trembling hands and carried it silently into the guest room, locking the door behind me. The latch clicked shut. My chest tightened. I placed the box on the bed and sat before it, staring. The initials carved into the wood, her initials, looked almost proud, mocking. I traced the grooves with my finger, the way I once traced her handwriting in birthday cards, in notes she used to leave in my lunchbox when we were first married. That memory was supposed to be warm. Instead, it burned. I unlatched the box. The smell hit me first, paper and dust, faintly sweet with a ghost of perfume. Like something preserved. I pulled out the top letter. The envelope was worn, the edges soft. The handwriting stopped me cold. I knew it instantly. Flowing, careful, every curve deliberate. Hers. The letter began, simply, "To my dearest." The name that followed wasn't mine. I read only fragments, because every line felt like a knife. Words of longing, of intimacy, of promises whispered in ink. She wrote about nights I thought she was working late, about trips to the store that lasted longer than they should have, about him. Always him. My hand shook. I shoved the letter back inside and pulled out another. This one had a photograph tucked inside. Her, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not the polite smile she wore at family dinners, not the tired smile she gave me at the end of a long day. This was alive, radiant. And she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at whoever held it. I felt the room tilt. Letter after letter, photograph after photograph. An entire hidden life unfolded before me. Vacations I never knew she took. Dates. Memories. Intimacies. The years I thought we were building a family. She was building something else, with someone else. And then, one note. Crumpled. Ink smudged as if she wrote it in a rush. "He's yours. He'll never know." The words burned. My throat closed. "He's yours. My son. My boy." I couldn't breathe. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the bed until my knuckles turned white, until the dizzying wave passed. Every moment of his life replayed in my head. His first steps across the living room carpet. The way his small hand fit inside mine when we crossed the street. His laughter when I chased him in the yard. All those moments, were they lies too? Was I loving another man's son without knowing? I closed the box with a violent snap, pressing the lid shut as if I could contain the poison inside. My chest heaved. Sweat prickled my skin. A knock on the door made me flinch. Her voice followed, light, casual, carrying no hint of the storm inside me. "Breakfast is ready." For a moment, I couldn't move. My hand hovered over the box like it was a weapon I didn't know how to use. Then I shoved it under the bed, out of sight. I opened the door, careful to steady my face. She stood at the end of the hall, hair tied back, apron dusted with flour. She smiled, warm and easy, like she had every morning for years. And all I could see was ink on paper. He's yours. He'll never know. I forced my mouth to stretch into a smile. I walked past her, brushed my hand along her arm as if nothing was wrong. She didn't notice the stiffness in my touch. She didn't notice my eyes flicker toward her phone resting on the counter, screen tilted away from me, as always. She poured coffee, humming under her breath. My son padded into the kitchen, still groggy, rubbing his eyes. She bent to kiss his head, her lips lingering on his hair. And I wondered, was it guilt that kept her so tender with him? Was it love? Or was it just the performance of a woman hiding a crime? I sat at the table, watching. My spoon clinked against the bowl, the only sound I allowed myself. She talked about groceries, about the weather, about the neighbor's dog that kept digging up the flower bed. I answered when I had to, short, clipped. My voice didn't betray me. Not yet. But inside, denial battled truth. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe those words were metaphor. Maybe those photographs weren't what they seemed. Maybe. But the handwriting was hers. The intimacy was undeniable. And the box had been hidden in his closet. Not in ours. Not in the attic. Not in the basement. In the one place where our son, my son, should have felt safest. The thought churned my stomach. She hadn't just lied to me. She had poisoned his sanctuary. I finished my breakfast in silence, set the spoon down gently, and kissed her cheek before leaving for work. Her skin was warm, soft, familiar. She didn't see the storm in my eyes. But I knew. The nightmare wasn't his. It was mine. The office was a blur that day. Papers, emails, phone calls, they slid past me like meaningless noise. People spoke, their mouths moved, but their words dissolved before they reached me. I sat at my desk, staring at spreadsheets, pretending to be present, while my mind replayed every line of those letters, every photograph burned into memory. At lunch, I closed my office door and took out my phone. My thumb hovered over her name in my contacts. The urge to call her, to scream, to demand answers nearly consumed me. But I didn't. Rage was easy. Patience was power. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and leaned back in the chair. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me. The sound grated, too bright, too sharp. I closed my eyes and thought about her face at breakfast, her smile, the easy way she hummed over scrambled eggs like she had no blood on her hands. Masks. That's what they were. Every laugh, every kiss, every tender look. Masks she had perfected. But I had a mask too. And mine was becoming stronger by the hour. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, the house looked like it always did. White siding, trimmed hedges, the swing creaking softly in the breeze. Normal. Safe. Domestic. A lie. Inside, she greeted me with the same warmth as always. She kissed me lightly, took my jacket, asked about my day. I answered carefully, offering just enough words to keep her from asking more. She didn't notice the chill in my tone, or if she did, she chose to ignore it. My son ran into the living room, laughing, holding a toy truck. I scooped him up, hugged him, inhaled the scent of his hair. Innocent. Pure. He was blameless in all of this, yet he was the center of the storm. As I held him, my eyes drifted over his shoulder to her. She was watching us, her smile soft, almost wistful. For the first time, I wondered what she saw when she looked at him. Did she see me? Did she see the other man? Or did she just see the weight of her secret pressing down on her chest? Dinner was routine. She talked about the parent-teacher conference next week, about how our neighbor was thinking of selling his house, about a new recipe she wanted to try. I nodded, chimed in when I had to. She never stopped smiling. But I studied her. The way her hand lingered over her phone, thumb brushing the edge as if it were a lifeline. The way she set its screen down whenever I walked near. The way her eyes flicked to me, then away too quickly, as though measuring my mood. Little things. Subtle things. But now I noticed. After dinner, she cleared the table while I read to our son. His head rested against my chest, his eyes half closed as I spun out a story about knights and dragons. My voice was steady, calm, even though my thoughts were elsewhere. When I tucked him into bed, he whispered, "Thanks, Daddy," before sleep took him. Daddy. The word cracked something inside me. It was the truth to him. But to me now, it was a question I couldn't answer. I kissed his forehead and stepped quietly out of the room. Later, she joined me in the living room, curling up beside me on the couch. She tucked her legs under a blanket, leaned her head on my shoulder. Her warmth seeped into me, familiar, almost comforting. Almost. She laughed softly at something on the TV, her hand brushing my arm as though nothing in the world could be wrong. I forced myself not to pull away. Instead, I studied the details. How her laugh sounded too practiced. How her body pressed close, but her eyes darted occasionally to her phone on the table. How her fingers lingered just a second too long, like she was reminding herself to play the part. And I realized she was acting. The thought didn't anger me. It clarified things. If she was acting, then so could I. I smiled at the right moments. I wrapped my arm around her when the movie turned sentimental. I kissed her hair when she sighed and said she loved me. But inside my mind was steel. I had entered a new life, a double life. There was the man she believed she still owned. Husband, father, loyal, blind. And then there was the man who watched from the shadows, cold, calculating, already preparing for war. I let her believe in the first man. But the second man, the real me, was sharpening his knives. That night, as she slept beside me, I turned to study her face in the dim glow of the moonlight. Peaceful, innocent looking. The face of the woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew. I wanted to wake her, shake her, force her to confess. But no, confession on my terms would mean nothing. She needed to reveal herself by drowning in her own lies. I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling. The silence pressed down on me, heavy but clear. Every excuse she had ever given, late nights, work emergencies, the sudden shopping trips, the hushed phone calls in the kitchen, all of them carried new weight now. They weren't random. They weren't harmless. They were part of a pattern, a web she spun while I looked the other way. Not anymore. I turned my face toward her one last time. Her lips parted slightly in sleep, her breathing steady. "You'll never see it coming," I whispered, so softly that even the walls wouldn't carry the sound. Then I closed my eyes and let the mask of sleep fall over me, while the second man, the real me, planned what came next. The days that followed blurred together, each one a stage for my performance. By morning, I was the husband she thought she had, smiling faintly, sipping coffee, asking about errands. By night, I was the investigator, peeling back layers of her life with quiet precision. Suspicion had become oxygen. I breathed it in, and it sharpened me. The first chance came on a Tuesday. She was in the shower, steam fogging the bathroom mirror, her voice carrying faintly as she hummed. Her phone rested on the counter. Screen dark, vulnerable. I picked it up. My fingers trembled, not with guilt, but with anticipation. The screen unlocked with her code. I had memorized it years ago, though I had never used it until now. Her messages told me everything I needed to know, without saying it outright. Threads half erased, names reduced to single letters or emojis. But gaps tell their own stories. A missing link in a chain means there was once something there. And when I scrolled further back, I found fragments. Can't stop thinking about last night. He's asking questions. We have to be careful. And once. I wish it could be different. I wish we didn't have to hide. No names. No clear photos. But her tone was unmistakable. The intimacy was undeniable. The water stopped. My pulse spiked. I set the phone back exactly as I found it, screen down, angle unchanged. By the time she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, smiling at me, my face was calm. I kissed her cheek, let her pass, as though my world hadn't just cracked open again. The second chance came 2 nights later. She told me she was going to the store. Milk, bread, eggs. The usual. I nodded, kissed her, and watched from the window as her car pulled out of the driveway. I waited 2 minutes, then followed. The roads were quiet, lit only by the occasional street lamp. I trailed her carefully, far enough back to avoid suspicion, but close enough not to lose her. She didn't turn toward the store. She turned toward the old part of town, where the streets narrowed and the buildings leaned with age. She pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop I'd never heard her mention. I parked 2 blocks away and walked, keeping to the shadows. Through the window, I saw her. She sat at a corner table, her posture tense, her fingers curled around a cup. And across from her, a man. I couldn't see him clearly. His back was to me, shoulders broad, hair dark. He leaned forward when he spoke, his hand brushing hers across the table. My stomach clenched. She laughed at something he said. Not her polite laugh, not the laugh she gave me at home. This was unguarded, alive. I stood there in the cold, watching the performance unravel, until the sight of it threatened to shatter my control. Then I turned and walked away. That night, when she returned, she carried grocery bags into the kitchen. She set them down with practiced ease, pulling out bread, milk, eggs. She had gone to the store, after all. She had covered her tracks. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice light. I nodded. "Everything's fine." And I smiled as I kissed her cheek. But inside I filed the image away, her hand brushing his, her laugh ringing through glass. Evidence. The third chance came when she fell asleep beside me, her phone resting on the nightstand. I waited until her breathing deepened, until her body stilled, then slipped the phone into my hand. This time I searched deeper. Not just messages, photos, emails, calendar entries. I found folders hidden behind innocuous names. Work notes. Recipes. Inside, nothing of the sort. Blurred photos of hotel rooms. A mirror selfie of her in a dress I'd never seen before, smiling in a way I hadn't earned. I stared at it for a long time. My chest tightened. Beside me, she shifted in her sleep, sighing softly, curling closer. I set the phone back, careful, precise. I lay awake the rest of the night, listening to her breathe, wondering how many nights she had slept soundly after lying to me. By day, I carried on the act. At work, I answered calls, signed papers, nodded at coworkers. At home, I smiled when she asked about dinner, hugged my son when he showed me his drawings, laughed at the right moments during family shows. But every second was theater. At night, when the house grew still, I would sit in the dark, replaying the evidence. Letters in the box. Messages on her phone. The man at the cafe. The photographs. And always, the note burned brightest in my mind. "He's yours. He'll never know." Those words became a chant, a drumbeat that followed me everywhere. At work, at the store, at the dinner table. "He's yours. He'll never know." I watched my son more closely now. His smile, his features, the way he tilted his head when he was curious. Did he look like me? Did he look like her? Did he look like him? The questions gnawed at me until there was only one way forward. DNA. The thought came like lightning. Cold, precise, final. If the truth was to be revealed, it wouldn't come from her lips. It would come from science, from numbers on paper that couldn't lie. One night, when the house was quiet, I slipped into the bathroom. I took one of my son's toothbrushes, tucked it into a small plastic bag. I took one of mine, sealed it the same way. I would send them away under a name no one knew. Quiet. Surgical. No mistakes. When I returned to bed, she stirred. She curled into me, resting her head on my chest, whispering that she loved me. I stroked her hair and whispered it back. My voice was steady, warm, but my heart was steel. I was done with suspicion. I was done with guessing. The truth was coming. And when it did, I would be ready. The package looked harmless. Just a small padded envelope, sealed, addressed, ready to vanish into the system. Inside it lay 2 toothbrushes, one mine, one his. Ordinary objects carrying the weight of a world. I stood at the post office counter, my hand hovering above the drop box. The clerk barely glanced at me, just another man mailing just another parcel. But to me, this was no parcel. This was the detonator of my life. When I let it go, the sound was almost inaudible, just the thud of an envelope hitting the bottom of a bin. But inside me, something shifted. There was no going back now. The waiting began. Each day stretched itself into unbearable lengths, seconds dragging their feet, hours swelling like storm clouds. I went to work, answered emails, attended meetings. I came home, ate dinner, played with my son, kissed my wife. But everything was tinted by that quiet countdown. The lab's confirmation email came the next morning. Samples received. Results will be available in approximately 7 to 10 business days. 7 to 10 days. An eternity disguised as a week. I watched her more closely now, though always through the mask of normalcy. She hummed while cooking. She texted when she thought I wasn't looking. She kissed me softly at night, curling against me like nothing was wrong. If she sensed my distance, she didn't show it. Perhaps she had grown used to my silences. Or perhaps she was too consumed by her own secrets to notice mine. And then there was my son. He was 5, still young enough to believe in magic, in monsters under the bed, in the safety of his parents' arms. He would climb onto my lap with his crayons, showing me drawings of dragons and castles. He would smile when I read him stories, leaning against my chest, his small body warm and trusting. But I studied him now the way a scientist studies a specimen. His jawline, his eyes, his hair. Did he resemble me? Or was I fooling myself, seeing familiarity where there was none? One evening, he looked up at me, his face smeared with chocolate, and laughed. A laugh that wasn't mine. A sound that carried echoes of someone else. My chest tightened until I had to excuse myself. I locked myself in the bathroom, gripping the sink until my knuckles whitened. The waiting was killing me. Every vibration of my phone made my heart lurch. Every new email subject line was a knife waiting to fall. I dreamed of numbers, of reports with cold, clinical language. Probability of paternity, 0%. And sometimes the opposite. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Either way, I rehearsed my reaction. How would I face her if the truth aligned with my worst fears? How would I look at my son? But what haunted me most wasn't the possibility of betrayal. It was the possibility that nothing would change at all. What if the report came back in my favor? Would I forgive her then? Would I erase the notes, the photographs, the nights she disappeared into lies? Or would I remain here, a man forever doubting, forever watching shadows? On the 4th night of waiting, I couldn't sleep. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the hallway clock. She slept beside me, her breath steady, her body turned toward mine. I slipped out of bed and walked through the dark house, each creak of the floorboards sounding like confession. I stopped at my son's door. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of light from the night lamp spilling into the hall. I pushed it open and stepped inside. He lay tangled in blankets, one arm curled around his stuffed bear, his lips parted in sleep. His chest rose and fell with soft rhythm. For a long time, I just stood there, watching him. If he wasn't mine, what then? Could I ever sever this bond, erase these years, these moments? Could I look at him and see only a stranger's blood? I sank into the chair in the corner of his room, my head heavy in my hands. A whisper escaped my lips before I could stop it. I don't care. You're mine. And yet, even as the words left me, I knew they were a lie. Because care was all I did. Care was all that consumed me. The next morning, I watched her from across the breakfast table. She buttered toast, poured juice, smiled when our son made a mess with cereal. Her eyes flicked to me once, searching, as if she sensed the shift in me. I smiled back, mask intact. But inside, the clock ticked louder. 7 to 10 days. And on the 7th day, my phone buzzed with an email. The subject line was simple, almost cruel in its banality. Your DNA test results are ready. My breath caught. The world stilled that I didn't open it. Not yet. Not there. Instead, I slipped the phone into my pocket and rose from the table. I have to run an errand, I told her. My voice was steady, rehearsed. She nodded, unsuspecting, turning back to her plate. I left the house, the air sharp against my skin, the world suddenly too loud, too bright. The truth waited in my pocket, only a touch away. The gamble was over. Now came the reveal. I sat in my car, the engine off, parked in the corner of an empty lot. Morning light spilled across the windshield, but inside it was dim, as if the world itself was holding its breath with me. The phone lay in my palm, the email glowing on the screen. Your DNA test results are ready. One swipe, one tap, and everything would be different. My hand trembled. My throat felt raw. For days I had prepared myself for this moment, rehearsed how I would react, how I would carry the weight of either outcome. But preparation meant nothing now, because the truth doesn't ask permission. It arrives whether you're ready or not. I tapped. The report loaded. Words and numbers swam before my eyes. For a second, I couldn't comprehend them. My brain refused to translate what was written in that cold, scientific language. Then it sharpened. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. Not mine. The words detonated inside me. A hollow boom in my chest, echoing in every corner of who I thought I was. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles ached. My jaw locked. My breath came shallow, as though the air itself no longer wanted to stay in my lungs. 0. Not mine. I stared at the numbers, waiting for my body to react the way it should. With rage, with screams, with something loud and violent. But nothing came. Instead, silence pressed against me, suffocating and vast. I thought of my son, his laughter, his drawings, the way he clutched my shirt in fear. I thought of the nights I had rocked him to sleep, the mornings I had carried him on my shoulders. The scraped knees, the bedtime stories, the whispered reassurances in the dark. All those memories, all those moments, and still, the report declared him a stranger's blood. But how could a stranger's blood feel so much like mine? My hand shook as I lowered the phone. I didn't drive home immediately. I sat there, hours maybe, staring at the dashboard. The world outside moving on as if nothing had changed. Inside me, though, everything was undone. At last, I started the engine. The sound was too loud, too normal. The kind of sound you hear on any morning, not the morning you learn your life has been a lie. I drove slowly, each turn automatic, muscle memory guiding me while my mind spun in an endless loop. 0. Not mine. 0. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, humming softly as she unpacked groceries. A domestic scene. Perfect. Familiar. She turned, smiled. And then her eyes dropped to the envelope on the counter. The one I had left there, face down, deliberately. Her smile faltered. "What's that?" she asked, her voice tight, too casual. I said nothing, just pushed it toward her. She hesitated, then picked it up. Her fingers fumbled as she opened it, as though part of her already knew what was inside. The moment her eyes landed on the words, the color drained from her face. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed into the chair opposite me. Tears filled her eyes instantly, spilling down her cheeks. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, I can explain." Explain. The words sliced through me, as if there was anything left to explain. I didn't shout. I didn't throw the report at her face. My stillness terrified her more than rage ever could. She sobbed, her hands clutching at her hair, her shoulders shaking. "It wasn't what you think. It was a mistake. It was years ago, I thought." I cut her off with silence. That was enough. Every excuse, every fractured truth only deepened the chasm she had created. When she finally ran out of words, when her sobs became shallow gasps, I spoke. "Do you know where I found your letters?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide, wet with panic. "In his closet." Her mouth opened, but no sound came. The weight of that detail crushed her. She had hidden her betrayal in the one place our son trusted most, the place he called safe. "Your lies haunt him now," I whispered. My voice was steady, low, the kind of calm that made her tremble. "Your betrayal echoes in his nightmares." She shook her head violently, denial spilling from her lips. But the truth was already carved between us. I stood, pushing the chair back slowly, deliberately. "I don't need to punish you," I said, my voice like stone. "You've already punished yourself." Her sobs followed me down the hall as I left her crumpled at the table. That night, I sat by my son's bed. He slept soundly, unaware of the storm his existence carried. His chest rose and fell with perfect rhythm. His small fingers curled around his stuffed bear. I brushed his hair back gently, the way I had done 1,000 times before. He was innocent. The sin wasn't his. It was hers. For the first time since the results arrived, the storm inside me quieted. Not peace. Not forgiveness. Just clarity. The truth had stripped away everything unnecessary. Love. Trust. Marriage. All illusions shattered. All that remained was control. Mine. She would live with her guilt. She would drown in it. That was her prison, not mine. I tucked the blanket around him, whispering softly into the darkness. She broke us. Not you. Never you. And as I closed the door behind me, the silence that filled the house no longer felt suffocating. It felt like freedom. The house never sounded the same again. Even in silence, it groaned differently. Walls pressing in, floors carrying the weight of secrets heavier than one could bear. Each sound reminded me of her sobs that day, the way she folded in on herself at the table, drowning in guilt while I stood unmoved. But the silence was mine now, and I guarded it carefully. She tried, of course. Apologies poured from her lips like a broken faucet, sometimes whispered, sometimes screamed. She begged for another chance, for forgiveness, for the life we had built. But forgiveness is a currency, and betrayal bankrupts it. I answered her pleas with stillness, with quiet. I ate my meals in silence. I watched her move through the house like a ghost, her laughter gone, her smiles forced. She kept looking at our son like he was both salvation and curse. The way her eyes lingered on him made her guilt louder than any confession. She knew what I knew now. Every time I looked at him, the truth stared back. And yet, he was blameless. I reminded myself of that each day. I never let my voice rise at him. Never let him see the storm in me. He deserved protection, not punishment. He was innocent, even if the blood in his veins carried another man's name. If anything, my care for him grew sharper, fiercer. He was mine because I chose him, not because of percentages printed on a sterile report. He would never know the truth. Not for me. That was her burden to carry, not his. At night, she curled into me sometimes out of habit or desperation. I let her. Her warmth meant nothing now, only a reminder of how easily she had given it to someone else. But I had no interest in rage anymore. Rage consumes the wrong person. I wanted her alive, living, breathing, so she could feel every ounce of guilt each time she looked at me. That was punishment enough. Weeks passed. Neighbors saw nothing unusual. At barbecues, at school drop-offs, we played the roles we had perfected for years. She held my hand when others were watching. I smiled at her in photographs. No one knew the truth behind the glass. But she knew. And that was all I needed. One evening, I sat with my son while he drew dragons and castles. He held up a page, his eyes shining with pride. Look, Daddy, this one breathes fire. I smiled, my chest tightening. It's perfect. He leaned against me, secure, unaware of the war he had inherited without asking. And in that moment, I understood the final piece of clarity. She might have broken our marriage, but she would not break my fatherhood. Blood or not, he was mine. And she would live every day with that truth pressed against her chest like a knife. I didn't leave her. Not because I loved her. Not because I forgave her. But because leaving would free her. It would give her a chance to rebuild, to escape the ruins she created. Staying kept her imprisoned. Every breakfast, every bedtime, every smile from our son became a reminder of the man she betrayed and the son she forced into my arms under falsehood. I didn't need revenge in flames. I had revenge in silence. Sometimes, late at night, I sat alone in the living room, the box of letters on the table before me. I would run my fingers across the carved initials, across the handwriting that once belonged to a woman I thought I knew. And then I would close it again, because I no longer needed the box to remind me of the truth. The truth lived with us now. It slept under the same roof. It breathed the same air. And I controlled it. The man I had been, the one who trusted, who believed, who loved freely, was gone. What remained was sharper, quieter. A man who understood the fragility of love and the permanence of betrayal. A man who no longer believed in happy endings, only in control. The world would never know. To everyone else, we were still a family, a picture framed in smiles. But behind closed doors, the silence spoke louder than words. And every time she reached for her phone, every time she turned the screen slightly away, I didn't need to wonder anymore. Because I already knew what she was capable of. And she knew I knew. That was enough.